moving to Brora now, to Lady Hadassah Rigetti. I haven't got all your names to hand, I'm afraid, Hadassah. Um, she is married to Lord Michael Rigetti, who served in the Italian military for 32 years, eventually serving in the Italian embassy before they decided to retire and live in the Highlands almost 2 years ago. And I understand that Hadassah has opened the Blue Highlands Raptor Rescue and Avian Conservation Centre there, um, which sounds totally fascinating. I'm sure she'll tell us something about that, as well as about how to be Jewish in the circumstances of finding yourself in Brora or taking yourself to Brora. So I'll hand over to Hadassah now to tell us about her life.
There's so much to tell and identify so much with what's already been said. And sorry, I'm taken a bit aback because I expected maybe 20 people before you got to me. So I'm not as prepared as I might be. It's been a tremendous journey, and I liked also what Bill and Emily were saying about the paradoxical sense of being up here. On one hand, I can honestly say for all the countries we've lived in, mostly down to my husband's career, of the countries we lived in, Scotland is absolutely the most generous in terms of just traditional Scottish hospitality. And to me, it's almost identical to Judaism in that way. You don't go somewhere in Scotland and not meet a friend that you would have for life. And that's just a very rare thing, especially in my background. It's not been my experience at all in many of the countries that we've had that my husband's been stationed in and I would have to go back and forth to. Wow. Most important things about it. I'm going to relate to all the things that you've already brought up. It's difficult. I mean, Mark's Deli gets a lot of orders out of us, certainly a lot of online things. We are Shomer Shabbat. It makes things extremely complicated. Not so much for social things, because despite the public nature of our work, I'm not a very social person. I hold very dear certain people who are friends, but I don't have the deep needs that I think most normal, healthy people have in terms of needing lots and lots of people as company. And perhaps that's why I gravitate toward animals. I don't know. But anyway, my situation's quite different in that the challenges that I have the most have to do with, ironically, with what more than half of Torah deals with, which is agrarian life with animals, life with how to treat the land, life with how to deal with food. These are things that I deal with every day, and they are 10 times, 20 times, sometimes 100 times harder than dealing with things such as just simple kosher eating, which is difficult in and of itself for all the reasons I'm sure you all attest. In our case, we're working. For 30 years, I've worked with birds of all kinds. Pretty much any bird you can think of, I probably had two of them. And we've always done a lot of rescue, rehabilitation, done a lot of things that most of the veterinarians won't do or can't do or don't have enough experience doing. Tutored under avian veterinarians. My degrees are not in avian medicine. My degrees are entirely classics. But this is what I've just always done. And so this is what I've always done. And I've never really had a choice about it. But if I'm honest, it just got planted on me since the time in my childhood. I've just never been able to get away from birds. But anyway, so in our case, I would say the giant challenges that we've faced really are to do with things that I think people had to face in ancient times. What do you do when you get a bird in? When a primary law is you cannot cage a bird on Shabbat. What do you do with that? That's something that nobody has to worry about because nobody does that. Well, guess what? When it comes in with a broken wing, this is a subject I have to deal with, and I take it very seriously, and I make certain that we keep all of these laws. What do you do when you have an open wound bleeding and you can't sew on Shabbat and it's suture time? And the bird's going to bleed out before you can get it to the nearest veterinarian, which is 40 minutes away. So these are the problems that we face. We face a lot of the things that I think all of our people did in antiquity, and how to deal with animals, and even more complicated in terms of most of the animals that we work with are actually, most of them, the vast majority of the birds that we work with are non-kosher birds. They're eagles and eagle owls and falcons and shorebirds and oyster catchers and on and on and on. Now, right now, there's an Arctic tern behind me in the surgery today. Cormorant downstairs. So it goes on and on. This creates a whole new level of layers of other laws that I have to be aware of and how to deal with that. We have 3 refrigerators that are not our human refrigerators. They're only for animal food. They eat 10 kilos of food every single day. And guess what? That has to be food that's kosher, because I don't keep unkosher. It gets really complicated. And so that is a difficulty, and also in the education, because I find that in terms of what matters to me in the work that we do, aside from being the only full-on support for all species of birds in Scotland, full stop, and that means no kill shelter if they can't make it on their own, wild release, full education program, and an active program dedicated to doing nothing but breeding species who are extinct in the wild. One of the big things that's very near and dear to my heart is talking to other Orthodox Jewish people about the importance of this kind of conservation, and how we're meant to be incredible stewards of our world and of nature and of those things which are under our purview, and instead, what we see, for instance, both my oldest daughters, made Aliyah, both are engaged, Baruch Hashem, right now in Israel, and in Israel, nobody, they live in Mea Shearim, and nobody even has a cat or a dog, which we don't have cats or dogs either, because we do birds, obviously, but I'm just saying, for being such an agrarian-based, Torah-loving, Torah-following people, it's kind of stunning to me that not through any drive by virtue of our religion, but by force of just tradition, of just this kind of morphed tradition that says, you know what, there are a lot more laws to deal with if you have an animal, so let's just not have any. But the problem is, I think we've really missed something, haven't we? Aside from the grandiose pictures and saving birds that are endangered and that's great, and that's its own thing. But I mean, in terms of just Judaism, isn't it important for us to engage more in conservation in terms of animals? Because it's not enough just to plant a tree, and we're meant to be kind of the pioneers and the people who are the flag bearers, if you will, about how to treat and protect nature. And when we willfully disengage, I think it's an avera. I think it's actually going against the entire spirit of Torah, because we're saying, well, we don't really want these extra laws. Well, who does? But at the same time, to not do anything at all when we have so many of the laws are constantly saying you will, even from the first 10 words, right? You have cruelty to animals addressed. So it's something I just think is really gone under the radar, and it's something I would like to see addressed better. I think we should do better. We should do more than plant a tree on a happy day. I think that we owe a great deal more than that. But anyway, so that's the end of my soapbox speech. So that's a big frustration for me, is just trying to deal with the intense observance issues as it comes down to caring for endangered species of birds who are, hanging, their lives are hanging by a thread. We have a bird right now in here that had his wing hit, and it's a 360-degree turn. It was not just back to front, it was all the way around. It was a horrific break, and we get over 100 wing breaks a year, and most of them are down. That's another thing. The reason that we do what we do is because 94% of the birds, that is to say 94 of every 100 birds that come through, and that's lots of hundreds, are all injured because of mankind. The vehicle strikes and train strikes and electrocution injuries from power lines, and fish hooks stuck in their mouths, or nets around their necks, or shot, or someone was hunting and they shot something and they left the lead pellets in it, and the bird of prey ate it, and they've got lead poisoning and got to go through all this. So there's only about 5.5% of the birds that come through actually are just bird on bird, just nature. All of the rest of it is down to human activity, and that's really my driver in terms of why I feel so obligated to try to correct this. We're not proud of what we do here. It's a humble apology for a really poor treatment of animals that protect our world. I mean, without them, we would all have died of. You think COVID's bad? All of the major. We've got a historian here; she can attest to this. I mean, a lot of people don't connect the dots, but the fact is, the last 6 major plagues that hit the world to almost wipe out humanity, all of them were down to mice and rats run amok. It was a perfect storm of the larger cities, the poor sanitation, the poor food storage, and the active persecution of owls specifically, but all raptors. They would hammer owls on the door because they said it kept evil spirits away. So it's literally our immune system. It's our immune system. They're keeping us safe from all of the diseases that are harbored by those rodents. And you say, well, okay, well, that's fine, that was back then. Actually, we're still doing it today with the rodenticides and the pesticides. Again, all of these things can be addressed and should be addressed, in my opinion, in a big way by our communities here and abroad.
Yeah, I'm sorry to stop.
That's it. No, sorry. I'll be going forever. So
no, well, I think there's another session merited in this, but I think that was very interesting to hear about the ethical issues that you've raised, and my way of keeping kosher is to be vegetarian, partly because of out of concern for our agricultural methods, and I think in the kosher world those concerns are not addressed, in my view, about how well you keep animals and kill them, etc. So big issues, and thank you very much for telling us about that. And you're on my list of somewhere to visit. We've just
please do anytime.
Yeah.